My name is Tina Swanek, and I'm the Career Explorer Northwest producer for KSPS PBS Public Television. Thank you all for joining us today. Real quickly, Career Explorer Live is an interactive Zoom event that connects young people with professionals so they can learn about careers and career paths. And today we're going to be exploring the career of a soil scientist with the help of our special guest, Dr. Catherine Perillo, Associate Professor in the Department of Crop and Soil Sciences at Washington State University. Founded in 1890, WSU is a public land-grant research university with 6 campuses, 11 academic colleges, 200 plus undergraduate fields of study, and nearly 150 graduate and professional degree programs. And today we're visiting with Dr. Perillo at WSU's flagship campus in Pullman, Washington. Hello, Dr. Perillo. Thank you for being
Good
here
morning.
today. Good morning. We really appreciate you taking time today to share information about your career and career path, and we're excited to learn from you.
Great. Well, welcome, and I'm really glad to be with you all. As a soil scientist, which I think you know is the title of the profession that we're spotlighting today, I said we have to do this down in the Henry W. Smith soil monolith collection. So we're looking at, behind me, all sorts of kind of intact soil profiles that have been excavated from around the state of Washington and a few other places too. I don't know how many of you grew up thinking you wanted to be a soil scientist. I know it was not on my radar until I was a senior in college, and I was a biology degree. So I had a lot of my math and science classes, et cetera, and could appreciate it. And I had this light bulb moment in one class that talked a little bit about soils, about just how important they were in the world. In terms of agriculture, in terms of environmental functions that they provide. And anyway, I decided I needed to go back to school at some point and learn more. At that point, I was kind of tired of school, but I knew I was really curious. And so I was going to go on. So I mentioned that sometimes you don't have to have a real plan. It's nice to have plans, but sometimes you go in a different direction. So I think that's something a lot of my colleagues would talk about too. Within and outside of soil science. I have moved back and forth across the country. My undergrad was in Vermont, and then I came out to Washington for graduate school, and then I went to Minnesota for more graduate school. And so I've kind of done that northern tier stretch and ended up coming back here. I've worked in agronomy. I've worked with what do I want to say? I've worked with an engineering company. That was actually my first job out of my undergraduate. And I went there specifically because I knew that someday I wanted to learn about soils. Let's see, I think that's the main part of my introduction. Here, my position is especially teaching. Faculty at WSU typically have teaching and or research and or extension work out to a public for their jobs, and mine is really mostly focused on teaching in soil sciences and sustainable agriculture.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Dr. Perillo, for being here today and taking time to share with the students. I want to quickly introduce our student groups today. We have students in the Ag Exploration class at Riverside Middle School with their instructor, Julie Kozel, and also students from Shadle Park High School with their instructor, Erica Hauk. So thanks everyone for being here today. We look forward to your questions and learning more. Quickly, the agenda for today's event. We've already received Catherine's, Dr. Perillo's introduction, and so we want to go ahead and open the floor at this point to questions from our students. We're going to start with a question from Riverside Middle School, and then we'll take a question from Shadle Park High School, and we'll continue with that order throughout the event. So Riverside Middle School, what is your first question for Dr. Perillo? And we'll have you go ahead and unmute.
What universities or college did you go to and if you had another choice to go to one, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. So I went to a small college in Vermont, which was perfect for me. I don't think I wanted to go to, I know I didn't want to go to a big university. So I have actually no real regrets in any of my choices. When I came out to Washington State University, I came out for a visit and I really enjoyed my visit here and the faculty. And so then I ended up deciding to come across the country and do my master's degree here. And then later I went and did my PhD in Minnesota. and which is a really big school, bigger than Washington State. So I don't have any regrets.
Shadle Park High School, your first question.
What advancement opportunities exist for somebody in your career, and how do you get to that point to advance?
So I'm going to answer that a couple ways. So I'm a faculty at a university, which usually, well, it depends on what discipline, but usually requires having a PhD or at least a master's degree, but usually a PhD. For soil scientists, there are practicing soil scientists out in engineering fields and conservation, working with farmers, all sorts of different realms, just trying to think of all the ways that soil kind of interacts with humans. And there's soil scientists that work with NASA. They probably have mostly PhDs. So the opportunities for advancement are going to depend a little bit on which industry you're in. In academia, you kind of start off at one level and you can get promoted through the years. In other companies and with federal and state government, there's promotion processes too. I don't know if that really answered your question.
Next question from Riverside.
What is the average salary of a soil professor?
Okay, so that's a good question. I did a little bit of looking yesterday, and if I'm as a professor, probably like starting out, like the low end would probably be 80,000 going up into the 100, maybe 120, something like that. It depends a lot on the field that you're into, but that's kind of a roundabout guess, I think. For out in the private sector, you can often earn a lot more than you can in academia, especially after you've been there for a few years and done a good job.
Shadle Park.
Did you have any professional experiences unrelated to this industry that allowed you to excel in your current position?
Oh, thank you for that question. So I mentioned that I never thought about, I mean, who grows up thinking they're going to be a soil scientist, right? It's just not even on the radar screen, or maybe it is for you all because you've had some ag exploration and education that way, but I didn't. And it was my senior year and I was in this class and I had this like light bulb moment, like a cartoon character, bling, with the little light bulb going off that I wanted to do this. So after I finished my undergraduate, I had some things lined up for the summer when I graduated. And then in the fall, I was like, okay, I'm going to find a job. And so I tried to look for jobs that related to soils. And so this is pre-internet, a very different world than it is now. But I was successful, and that's how we ended up working for an engineering firm. And that was great because I got to go out in the field pretty often, look at soils, and we were trying to assess whether it was okay to build there or put a septic system in. It was a little bit of a rural area. So I stayed in that job for several years, and then I was like, okay, a year from now, I think I'll be ready to be in grad school. And so that's when I applied to grad school.
What's your favorite part of your job, and do you do it often or not very often?
Oh, so I think something I like about it is variety. Like sometimes I don't actually get to talk through Zoom to classrooms very often, but I talk on Zoom with people from all over the place, whether like other professionals around the country or students at WSU who are in a different branch of the WSU system. So that's kind of fun, but I get to go out in the field sometimes and actually look at soils or teach people about soils. I think I really at heart probably am a teacher, and I really love seeing when someone's like puzzled about something and then go, oh, I get it. There's something really satisfying about that experience. I do spend a lot of time sitting at the computer as well. So I get to, in teaching, if I want to make a presentation, I can do that. I can enjoy that, or I can present without, slides or PowerPoint or any of that type of stuff. So it's kind of, I enjoy doing some of that. So, but I try not to do overly too much on that. I could kind of go down a rabbit hole there.
A lot of variety in your work.
What new skills have you learned or grown since taking your job?
Oh, that's an awesome one. Okay, Zoom is one of them for sure. Teaching over Zoom, especially during the pandemic, I'd been doing some online teaching before that, but not through Zoom. So that's definitely a new skill, just the whole access to information and the way we do that, that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, it's really life-changing when you can just pull up your phone and look something up. The downside about that, a colleague looked at soil science information that's out there on the web and Wikipedia, and soil scientists, like genuine soil scientists, are not super good at posting good information outside of, like technical reports and things like that. And so there's a lot of, I should say, less reliable information out there, either people just a little like misunderstanding things. I often find websites that I'm like, I think you meant to say this, just using some of the vocabulary incorrectly, like talking about soil texture as an example. Some of you all, I think, might know that, or at least many of you do, especially those of you that just finished a soils unit.
What type of decisions do you have to make as a soil scientist?
Oh, so that's a good question. That's an excellent question. So there's a lot of different types of decisions one needs to make. As a soil scientist, if I was like a professional soil scientist out there who was hired to analyze a site, for example, I would be looking at what the soil characteristics were at that site. So we kind of look at some of these soil profiles here. We can see there's lighter areas and darker areas, and some of it's really a lot of volcanic ash because we're in Washington. Some of it's not so much ash because of the part of Washington, things like that. So I can look at that and then decide how suitable that site is for different uses. Like, is it going to be good for growing a certain type of crop? Or is it going to be good for installing a septic system or not? Those types of decisions. So they're about what's the soil telling me, including some lab tests to back things up, or we could do field measurements too. On my professor job, there's all sorts of types of, small decisions. Like, I get really excited about soils, so I want to talk about everything in my classes. But really, in one class, you can only talk about so much, right? You don't want to be just totally overwhelming all the students. So I decide, like, okay, what's the really most important things that need to be conveyed, and try to focus on getting those across. So those are hard decisions, and I've been doing this for quite a few years now, and I still am like, you know what? I need to change that in my teaching. I need to do this a little differently. So there's those types of decisions too. So those are a couple examples.
Shado Park, next question.
What's the most surprising part of your career?
So a couple different things. And again, I'm going to answer it. Like, sometimes you go out in the field and you find, like, you don't know you're going to find something and you see it. And that's, there's certain types of soil features that aren't really that common, or that maybe I just never learned about before. Because think about all the different places in the world where there's soils, right? Even just in with the state of Washington. And so that's always really fun. A lot of times it's the students, just the students I'm working with, what they're interested in, insights that they have. Like, we don't know everything. I kind of, when I was a kid, I thought, well, when I'm an adult, I'll know everything. And there's no way, none of us are going to ever know that. And that's changing, becoming more and more impossible to know everything, right? And so you just hear how someone else looks at something and what they see and what they think about it, and it can be really inspiring.
Riverside.
What are some experiences that you learned as a soil scientist that impact your day-to-day life?
That's a good question. So as a soil scientist, you learn a lot about like different landscape positions and things like that. So when I drive down the road, I'm like not even consciously kind of like sort of in my head thinking about, gosh, I wonder why they're doing that unique thing in this spot. Maybe like a crop that's kind of unusual. Like, I wonder what's going on with the soil, or I look at the road cuts, or I look at like the low-lying parts of the landscape. And I don't know how many of you get to ride out in the country, but in wheat country where I am, the low-lying spots this time of year are often really light green and the rest of the wheat's really dark green. And what's going on there? Well, it has to do with what the microbes are doing in the soil. So it kind of affects me just as I drive around or at my own house, where I look at, oh, that's going to be wet soil down there, you know, because I think about that and never actually dug up, like to look at a whole excavated profile there, or even just dig a hole and look down. I've never done it, but I kind of know what's going to be down there because of that.
Hey, Shadle Park, next question.
Do you have a mentor, and if so, how did they help you in your career?
Yeah, really good question. I think the whole idea of mentoring is something we talk about explicitly now. You know, we talk about it, plan for it, et cetera. I think when I was going through school and graduate school and just early in my career, it wasn't set up as officially like, so there are people who I can think of individual people that let's see, like teachers or faculty member that I would talk to, or they would talk to me, and it was kind of about, you know, career options, or how are you doing today, you know, some of those types of things, or how did that, whatever, you know, sort of complex thing I was going to be doing, how did that go? I think it's important to seek out mentors, you know, people that you're comfortable with in your field. And your field may change, and so your mentors may change as you go through time. So I don't know that I have official mentors, but I have a few people who've been very important.
Riverside, next question.
What are some electives and that you chose in college or high school that grew your passion for soil, and what are some that we should look for?
Okay. Definitely take your science classes, biology, chemistry for sure. At least one physics class. Some people love physics and go more into that. It's never going to hurt you, other than the large amounts of math, so your math classes. The class that inspired me was actually a physical geography class, which looks at kind of the landscape and how people relate to it. And it was that was a really cool class, not something that I had in my high school by any means. And that's the one I was inspired with when I was in college. But I would say in high school or K-12, pay attention to those science classes. That chemistry, everyone's like, why is this important? Why do I care how orbitals spin and things like that? But it ends up, you know, everything's really made out of atoms, and having a little bit of understanding about that is really actually helpful on, you know, how plants take up nutrients, how water moves through soil, all those types of things that are happening out between humans and our environment.
Shadle Park.
What kinds of decisions do you make in your role?
We touched on some of this before, kind of decisions about suitability of the soil, what to include in lesson plans. One decision that you may not have thought about as a being in school, but once you're in the workforce, at least in academia, but I think this is true in the private industry too, there's always committees to set up. There's like the safety committee and the website committee and the committee to mentor somebody and all those. So you can, you have a lot of opportunities to grow your expertise or your personal, I don't know, ways of being, how you like to do things by joining certain of those committees, and then maybe saying no to others. You know, saying yes, I'll be on that committee to everything is probably not a good idea, but I would say it's a really good idea to volunteer to be on a committee, you know, to volunteer, you know, to be active in a club outside of your major, say when you're in college, or it doesn't have to be outside of your major, but outside, like, so you're doing something extracurricular. That's where you get to meet other students and make a lot of connections. And I think a lot of learning can happen in some of those environments that's a little, you know, it's not based on an exam.
What skills do you need for a PhD?
Persistence, drive, like, and you have to be interested in it, like in the topic. Like if someone asked me to do a PhD in some probably a lot of topics, I'd be like, no way am I going to put in that much work. But for me, it was just curiosity. Like I kept on wanting to learn more. I want to learn more. I still want to learn more about my topic area. So I think that's persistence, curiosity, obviously, sort of those details of, showing up, turning my assignments in when I'm in my classes or whatever. In a PhD program, you're usually doing some research, or maybe if it's in the humanities, you're, assessing a set of literature, for example. And but you have to, kind of a good work ethic, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And that and genuine interest.
Fatal Park, next question.
What do you think is the best way to get a job in this industry?
So there's probably more opportunities for soil scientists than there are people that have expertise. That has been the truth for quite a while now. Whether it's in agriculture side of things or the environmental side of things, I suspect up in NASA and looking at soils on Mars and things like that, which there's a few soil scientists doing that. So the best way to get a job in this industry is to have good, a good understanding of, basic communication skills, writing, math skills never hurt anybody. So I'll throw that one out there. But being good at the tasks that you're assigned or asked to do, a lot of times it's the letter of recommendation you get from somebody. You're like, this young man always turned all of his schoolwork on time. He, was active in several clubs, etc. Like procrastination is really tough in the real world. Like there's not a lot of tolerance for it. So being known to be a good worker is probably key. Making relationships, like maybe start thinking now about, what teachers do I know? Who would I ever want to ask to write me a letter of recommendation in the future, whether it's for college, whether it's for an internship type of opportunity, part-time summer job. There's a lot of jobs you can get that, especially as a summer type job, that are maybe more related to the area that you're interested in. For example, if you want to be in the agricultural industry, maybe there's a summer job somewhere in the agricultural industry, rather than working at, McDonald's. We always pick on that as not being a very, what I'm going to say, as much of a knowledge specific job. So being good at the things that you do, having some ideas of something that you're interested in trying to do, doing a good job there and making those relationships. Those are the things I would try to focus on.
Riverside, next question.
What advancement opportunities does someone in this job has, and how do you qualify for those?
A lot of the jobs are based on, or advancement, like if you stay with the same organization, whether it's a university or a business or in a government job, it's usually, putting your time in and doing a good job at it. It's a little bit, at some points you'll be asked, like there might be opportunities to take a decision where you go more into management or working more with people versus being a like a lab technician and using pipettes or things like that. And those decisions that you make along the way, you want to do things you feel comfortable about. And a lot of times, like if you want to become CEO, you start going into some of those more management things, but usually it's like working your way up, right? You start where you start. And then if you're good at what you're doing and your skills, your people skills and things like that are as important as your actual technical skills, if you've had those basic sciences and chemistry and biology type classes in your background.
Next question.
I think this is our final question. Are there any internships or externships available now for our graduating seniors?
There's a program that I would look for in the future, maybe, that there's often a lot of times that the The Natural Resources Conservation Service would have a program called a Pathways Program that might be, maybe you have to have a year of college under your belt, but I'm not sure what the qualifications for that one is. That sends you into all sorts of jobs in sort of the conservation realm, and that's with the federal government. The NRCS is a federal agency. If there's someone that you know, like, you want to, like, if someone may be working in a greenhouse, like even if it's at a big box store or a local nursery or something like that, maybe you start out and your job is to water plants and sweep the grounds. Well, that might be kind of interesting if you're interested in the growing of plants, for example, or think you have any interest in that realm. They'll give you lots of different experiences. Job shadowing is kind of a cool thing to do. And so think of summer jobs that might be related to areas that are fun for you. The job may not be the most fun job, but there probably will be some things you really like about it if you like the area, and you kind of get to see then, what are your bosses doing? Would I want to be in that position? So those types of opportunities I would suggest.
Did you choose this job for like the soil scientist part or like the professor part, and why?
So it was for the soil scientist part. And it had to do with, when you have your real life, like your private life and your work life. And in your private life, if you have like a partner or a spouse, you need to take their needs into consideration too, and their wants. So there's always be ready to sort of compromise what you're doing. And so that's how I ended up back at WSU, was because of my partner, and was able to like kind of build the job that I have, because like I was hired on temporarily to fill in a slot, and then it's like, hey, I kind of like this, and they're like, hey, you're doing an okay job. And so then it just grew into the job that I have now. So that's going to happen sometimes, and some people are very much on a certain path and they're going to go do that, and their relationships, are maybe less important. And for other people, I enjoy soils. I get to work in that field, and that's fine. There's probably another soils job I could have done as well, but this is the one that worked out for me. Probably a lot of ways that question could be answered.
What is one of your greatest achievements while being a soil scientist?
So one of the ones, I don't know if it's my greatest one, but one that comes to mind is a couple of years ago, I was the chair of a division of the National Soil Science Society of America. It's actually an international society, and they have different divisions, like the chemistry of soils, the physics of soils, the biology of soils. I chaired the education division, and that was actually really fun because I got to work with people in like planning of the upcoming conference, got to work with people, get to know other people around the whole country through doing that. So that was, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if it was I thought of my best one. My best one is I've gotten to go traveling a little bit, which has been really fun. So I was in Amman, Jordan, working with Iraqi women who were in the realm of extension. And I don't know if you know what that means, but that's like the university, this part of the university that educates the general public about things, that tries to get knowledge into the public realm. And that was awesome because this was during the Iraq War, actually. And it was really gratifying to work with these dedicated people for a week. We, kind of lived with them and ate with them and everything. So that was really, really a highlight. It was a while ago, but.
I think we just have a few more minutes, so I want to give Dr. Perella some space to share with us anything else she feels is important for the students to know about careers in soil science that maybe wasn't covered during the question and answer portion of the session.
Okay, I think we covered quite a lot of things. I mean, there are jobs from being like a research tech or being your own business where you go out in the field and you're hired to do those site consultations. that I was talking about before, being in academia, there's a lot of possibilities that you can go with this particular degree. Even at, say, a bachelor's level, there's quite a lot of opportunities for doing that. There's not a lot of schools that have an official soil science major. A lot of times the universities have combined a whole bunch of departments together to offer like an agriculture major or an environmental science major, something like that. So if you're interested in soils, you might have to dig through to figure out where that's taught at the university you go to. Or you can, if you know you want to be a major in soils, you can look for one of those rare universities that still have that. There's a few dozen of them that are out there. Let's see, those are the biggest career type things. I would say try to look at those things that make you happy and try to work in those areas. Look for work that aligns with things that make you happy. I know sometimes like skateboarding is not much of an income associated with that. So maybe you take a job that has the flexibility to allow you to go skateboarding more or something like that. But try to do things you're interested in, and don't be surprised if you find out about new topic areas that you had never thought about before.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Perola. We really appreciate you being here today, and your enthusiasm for your career really shows through, and I'm sure the students can feel that, and it will maybe inspire them to research soil science a little bit more as a possible career if they're not already doing so because of their classwork that's already inspired them. So thank you again. Dr. Catherine Perola from Washington State University was our guest here today. And I want to also thank our two schools that joined us today, Julie Kozel and the students from Riverside Middle School, and Erica Hauk and the students from Shadle Park High School. Thank you so much for your fantastic questions. We really appreciate the time you took to develop those questions about the industry in this field, so that you could glean more information to learn whether being a soil scientist might be the right fit for you. And that concludes our Career Explorer Northwest live event today.